Hello, everyone. It's Dan King here. It's a pleasure today to be joined by Dr. Alonda Alloway, licensed clinical social worker and owner of Loudon Counseling and Coaching. As always, it's Dan King here, and on the Better Mental Health interview series, it's our pleasure to be interviewing therapy practice owners who are building, a new world of therapy. Mental health is in flux right now in the country. And as listeners know, we're in the business of buying mental health practices to grow them, and we're thinking not just about how do you grow the business, but how do you deliver therapy exceptionally well? How do we move the industry towards more and more abundance and better service for clients? So again, my pleasure today to be joined by Alonda. Welcome to the show, Dr. Alonda Alloway.
Thanks for having me.
So tell me, how did you get into mental health and therapy?
Ooh, wow, that's a long story. Well, I started off in my social work career. Started with work with the homeless and potentially homeless, and then with working with that population, they were all adults, and I thought maybe I should work towards the root of some of those things and work with children. So I went into school social work, and in that practice, I started thinking about working with people more one-on-one, like in a therapeutic type of setting. So actually before that, while doing school social work, I became an adjunct professor, and I did that for 10 years. I was a school social worker for 21 years. And my last 4 years of school social work is when, the last 7 years of school social work, I really got into private practice, where I wanted to work with people one-on-one instead of just, like in the school setting. If a student comes to you with an issue, you may have just a few minutes to work with them. You see them one time, maybe they're allowed to come back another time or whatever, but it's inconsistent. You may have a student who's really, really going through something, and then their teacher sends a note saying, send that kid back. They have to take a test, or, whatever. Or administration comes in, or, someone comes in and interrupts that process. And I thought, in therapy, there's a dedicated time, there's a dedicated safe space where people can work through their issues, not only one time, but, therapy is a process. So people can come as long as needed to work through whatever issues. And I thought therapy, private practice specifically, would be the best place to work with people in those issues.
Super interesting, and I can see just in sort of underneath the words, tell me if I'm right, maybe a sensitivity to both what is going to get people results, as well as like a holistic, let's go really deep beyond just the most easily offered solutions and think in an interdisciplinary kind of holistic way, right? And maybe that takes us a bit towards your unusual, I would say, counseling and coaching practice, which is maybe a bit more holistic than your typical practice.
Very true. In coming up with the idea for Loudon Counseling and Coaching, initially I wanted to do a practice that had more than just a counseling element. Initially, I wanted something that had like some stress reducing elements to it, like yoga and things like that. And so while I was drawing up my business plan, my partner and I would hang out at the library together, and he was working on something dealing with his finance businesses that he was creating. And so I said, wouldn't it be cool to have one place where someone who can have all three elements, right? So typically, if someone is coming for mental health issues, oftentimes they're not taking care of themselves physically. So I wanted those physical health elements like the yoga and things like that, massage, and or sometimes people who are having physical health issues often is impacting their mental health, and so maybe they need some counseling. Maybe there's going through like cancer treatments, or a new diagnosis or whatever. They really need to talk to someone, right? So a combination of those people who are having issues with mental health, physical health, very often aren't taking care of themselves financially as well. So bringing in that financial well-being piece was important as well. So that's what Loudon Counseling and Coaching does. We have the three elements in one place here. So we have our mental health element, we have our physical health element, and our financial well-being aspect of it. So we have expanded into 2 suites, and I think I have about 12 or 13 people in mental health. I have licensed clinical social workers, licensed professional counselors, licensed clinical social psychologists, and on the health piece, we have massage therapists. We had someone who was doing yoga for children. So with pandemic and things like that, it's kind of hard getting people doing yoga and being touched with massage and things like that. So we're going to revisit that element of it. And then we also have 3 CPAs and an insurance broker who are also in our suite as well.
One of the questions that comes up for me, it's so cool as a fellow interdisciplinary thinker, always thinking about problems in a holistic sense. How does your triage system work? So if someone comes in, is there someone who's knowledgeable enough about physical health, financial health, and mental health that they can kind of put together a plan for someone, like who they should see at what time? Does that make sense?
Okay. So typically a client will inquire either through our main office or through each provider individually. So like on our site, I have everyone's email address so they can connect with those people directly instead of going to the main office. Trying to avoid that, but still some people do because they're like, I don't know which way to turn. And so in that sense, our office managers can say, can kind of do that triage piece. Or if a client comes to one of the providers and they're talking about some of the issues that they want to work with. Like I've had clients who I started working with and then found out that they haven't done taxes in like 5 years.
Yes.
Because they were afraid that I haven't done it this year, so I didn't do it next year, and it just built up and snowballed, and then so they're going through all these issues, and I'll say, you know what, I have some people right here around the corner who can help you with that. And so then I'll give them the names of the people. I'll give our CPAs the names of those people as well, and then they coordinate like that. So we don't get together as frequently as we would like as far as our staff all together, but when we do, it is when we were doing it early on initially, especially when we would bring in new people, and so that everyone could get to know what everyone's specialties are. So just because someone's a therapist doesn't mean that they will work with just anybody, right? So you need to know what that person's specialties are. You also need to know what people's biases are, which I think is very important when it comes to being a therapist. I hate when therapists say, "Oh, I work with everybody." Then for me, that's a red flag because you shouldn't. When I interview people, I like to ask what their biases are. And then, of course, someone's trying to get a job and they're like, oh, nothing.
No, I'm no biases ever.
No. Well, you probably wouldn't be a good therapist overall. And, people are often shocked when I say that, but it's important to know who you can be an effective communicator with, right? And so when people hear the word bias, they often think racist. I'm not asking, are you a racist? Are you a racist? Oh no, I will talk to. No, that's not. That's not what I'm talking about at all. But we all have our experiences who shape who we are, even as therapists, right? So if someone is sent to me who their issues are they were a domestic violence abuser. They tortured their family, spouse, and children. I know that I'm going to have a problem being objective with that person.
Yeah.
And that's me acknowledging that bias. No, I probably wouldn't be the best person to work with. Someone who has a history of sexual assault, oftentimes court ordered to counseling. I know I would not be the best person for you to work with because of my experiences, which have enabled my biases, right? So I think people need to get in touch with those things, because when people try to work with everybody, you may be doing a disservice to your client.
Super interesting perspective, and brings up so many questions for me. In my mind, I'm thinking about comparing this to like a criminal defense lawyer in a way. So, one of my best friends is a criminal defense lawyer. I'm a lawyer, although I don't practice anymore, and I think about the obligation as a lawyer to defend the person, even if you judge them, even if your own biases conflict with how you see them, right? How do you think that differs here? Like, for you, it's almost sounding like if you're a therapist, you got to really want to, as a human, be on their side to be able to serve them. Like, am I hearing you right?
Now that's a good question. Do you have to really be on their side? Maybe so. However, you can also have conflicting interests, right? So, so they don't you don't necessarily have to be on their side in every aspect, right? So, like, I have therapist friends who have different political views from their clients. Doesn't mean they have to say, well, you support this, so I won't see you again. No, we can all have differences of opinions, but when it comes to certain things where you won't be effective, and you can't be objective to help to treat a person, then you need to step away.
Interesting. Okay. What I really like about that is I think in other professions, there's this assumption, particularly in law, right, where I come from, there's this assumption that your humanity doesn't really matter in the equation. You put that aside, right? And one thing I think I'm hearing you say is, no, you gotta be self-aware first of all. Like, it's a total red flag if you're a therapist, Alonda's interviewing you, and you say, I have no biases. That probably indicates either a lack of self-awareness or honesty in the moment, right?
Yep. Exactly.
But some other professions say, no, leave your humanity at the door. Whereas you're saying, particularly in therapy, but maybe in general that's a bit of a fiction. You're working with someone in a close, intimate way. Both of your humanities are going to emerge, and you've got to be with that.
Yep. Very true.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know, it's kind of like being pro-life working in an abortion clinic.
Right.
Right. you in some way, your view is going to come across, and you might not. That might not be the job for you. You know?
Might not be. Yeah.
That might not be the place, right? So, so we need to, be fully aware of those biases.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they often they may emerge subconsciously. So you may think that you can handle that. You may see the difference of opinion. You may think you can handle it, but it might show up subconsciously. I mean, years ago, it's a small little story, but I was a salesperson for a real estate investing course, and it's weird, but it's one of my biases. I don't really like home ownership. It's a really strange thing, but it just happens to be one of my biases. So I wasn't the best salesperson for this. And I thought I could kind of reconcile that. I was sensitive to that issue, but I thought, I'm going to disclose it, handle it. But no, subconsciously, right? I self-sabotaged.
Yep.
And, we got to be aware, as a therapist, I'm sure you are, how much of a role our subconscious has in our behavior.
Exactly. Exactly. It plays a bigger role than we think.
It also sounds like maybe one of the other interesting aspects of uniqueness to explore here. We were talking about how interdisciplinary Loudon is. And yes, you guys meet from time to time to discuss each other's specialty. Even though you may not meet as often as you want, there's something really interesting about how I might be a very different CPA if I'm working there than elsewhere, because I'm going to be sensitive to some mental health issues. It's going to be like in the back of my mind that I have these great resources that I can refer people to, and it might affect the way I do my own job, right?
Very true. So, yes. So our CPAs, I don't know. That would be a good question to ask them. What is the difference between working outside of here than in here? And our CPAs, they have their own businesses, and they just work in here, as a referral type of a network type of thing. Actually, for all of my therapists, I encourage everyone when they come on board to start their own LLC.
Ah, okay.
So, so just about everybody here is their own business entity.
Okay.
But it would be interesting to find out from them, if they have changed a little bit in mindset about the sensitivities of their own clients. I know that some of them who have reached out to me saying, I was talking with a client and I wanted to run this by you, they were talking about this and I'm thinking that maybe they should see someone, and who do you think would be great, and I was thinking of this person because they have experience in, so it's been great, having the collaboration ability in-house to do that.
Interesting. So okay. So everyone is their own LLC. So no one is, other than you, sort of full time at the practice.
Correct, except for our office managers. Okay. They are employees, and everyone is contract.
Okay. So I'm curious, why for you is it such a big thing that you encourage them to start their own practice? Not every practice owner would say that.
That's true. And I think because I like people to be independent and own their own stuff. So even though they are here and it's under the umbrella of LCC, I like to call us a business of businesses, because when people feel empowered, they control their own schedule. They control who they see or who they do not see, and they have ownership of their work. And I think if you own what you do, you control it, and I'm not telling them, oh, you have to work on Monday and you work this day, you need to work this many hours. If you want to work 5 hours a week, you work 5 hours a week. That's on you. That's your business. If you want to work 30 hours a week, then you work 30 hours a week. So everyone sets their own schedule. Even the employees, the office managers set their own schedules as well. Everybody is empowered, because I think people work better that way than someone dictating what they should do, especially as adults. How many jobs have I had where, people tell you what to do, and I feel like I'm a child, I'm a grown woman, So in the business model, I wanted people to be able to feel grown. You're grown, so you can be grown in the business. I've found that it has, actually, I didn't notice this until some other people pointed out. I realized that just about everyone who's worked here, mental health side especially, has been here since like the beginning. And I've talked to some other practice owners who said that they've always had a lot of turnaround, and that they noticed that in my practice, they're like, you keep the same people for like years. How is that? And I'm like, really? And so I didn't think about it until like the second person said it, and then somebody else said it, and then I started looking to see like, that's true. What is it? And so then, in thinking about it, yes, I think that a lot of that empowerment piece is what makes them stay. To be able to set their own hours, set the number of clients they want to see, set when they work or when they don't work. And another piece is, I know that my revenue splits are much higher than other practices around here. Which now other folks are like, no, you gotta change those. But I'm not here to be rich off of other people's work. I want people to get the money from their own work. So I know that I'm kind of in a different league where it comes there, but in turn, I think that it has caused me to just be blessed with the practice that I have. We've made it to 5 years, which is, the threshold where people say, if you can make it to 5 years, you're good or whatever, because most businesses die out within the first year or two. And to not have the normal revenue splits that everyone else has, and to have them, more favorable to my contractors, has been a blessing. We're making it work.
It's so interesting. This is so interesting. Yeah, totally different from, I think, any other practice owner I've spoken with, and I've spoken with quite a lot. My first thought as business person, who is interested in this industry, is, are you limiting your own growth financially? And I guess your response to that would be yes, and that's cool, because getting rich is not the priority. Mm-hmm. And if that's so, what is the priority?
The priority is to help people to be functional in every aspect of their life that we can help them with. And so, I think if you do good with intention, good things happen to you. And that's just what's been happening. I can't explain how many times that I've been like, okay, well, maybe I should change the revenue splits because then we would have, whatever. And then whatever it is that I need comes through.
Yeah.
And it just keeps happening that way. So I'm good. The business is thriving. We can pay our bills. I can be paid. Everybody's paid. And,
You're taken care of.
We're taken care of. And so are the clients.
Yeah.
Which are the priority.
It's so interesting. Again, I mean, I don't think about growing a therapy practice in the same way, I'll be honest, but I am completely aligned with you in terms of how sort of the nature of reality works, I guess. Mm-hmm. My experience as well is that while people may have different values, different ways of running a business, if you are aligned with sort of who you are, right, each of us might disagree a little bit on exactly what the good is. But if you are being in the world in a way that is of service to others according to what you truly feel and your conscience, and you courageously act according to your conscience and your own human design, right, magical things do seem to happen. It's like precisely my experience as well. It's kind of eerie, right?
Very.
Yeah. And I think for me, as you talk about empowering your people, different ways to do it, but you used the term just now, I asked, like, what's your priority? Mm-hmm. And you said it's making people functional. Is that the way you put it? Mm-hmm. And I think, as I think about different definitions of therapy, like what are we doing here? It is granting agency. Agency is stripped from us in so many ways for so many reasons. And there is something just so beautiful about this process of reclaiming your own so that you can enable others to do the same. Mm-hmm. And so I've got to figure that empowered therapists are uniquely positioned to help others gain agency that they may have lost. If the therapist isn't empowered, doesn't feel empowered, I think that's going to diminish their own ability to do the same for others.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. And then think about those therapists who do not feel that, right? Yeah. And when you don't feel it, it comes across in your work. And people can pick that up, right? Yeah. So, what good is that doing the client? What good is it doing the therapist? And then oftentimes those therapists who are feeling that way tend to look for work elsewhere. Then what happens? The abrupt disconnect of that relationship, that therapeutic relationship, right? So then this person who has come to therapy, which is not an easy task to do, now goes back to square one of, now I got to build a whole new relationship with somebody. I got to tell my story all over to somebody,
It's exhausting.
And then they don't want to do it. It's exhausting. So, it's important for that therapist to feel whole within themselves in order to help other people to feel whole. Because if you're empty, you're not pouring in somebody else, and they can see that emptiness in you too.
Wisely put. Yes. This has been a fantastic conversation. I have learned so much. As we come towards the end of our time together, I'm curious, I like to end on a human note and ask, when you're not doing this important work at Loudon, when you're not empowering therapists and clients, what do you do for pure fun?
I am a huge football fan. Okay. And really the true definition of the word fanatic, you might want to throw in there. I'm pretty bad. I'm pretty bad. So, yeah, football season, Friday night, I might go to a high school football game. I don't have any kids in school anymore, but I'll be at a game sometimes.
Okay.
Saturday, I'm watching all the games from 12 noon all the way till I go to bed. Sunday, 1 p.m. all the way till I go to bed. Monday night, Thursday night. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
What's your team?
College, Georgia.
Okay.
I am biased though, but I mean we are the number one team in the nation. But I'm an alumni.
Just have to throw that in there. Yeah.
It's for the listeners. And NFL, I don't want to reclaim my team out loud because it's kind of complicated right now. I was a fan for many decades, and then they started acting up, and so now I'm on the fence. I don't know, but I love watching all the NFL teams because there's at least 2 players on each team that I enjoy watching. Since I love college ball, I like to see those young men grow into the next level and then watch them perform on that level. So, yeah. So I feel like an auntie, like, oh, look at little nephew. He used to play for Nebraska or something, whatever. Yeah.
Very, very cool. Alonda, such a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming on the show. As I say, I learned a ton, and I'm confident listeners will as well.
Cool. Thanks again for having me.